Dr. Jasuja and his team for holding such a lovely session over here, and I'd also like to thank them to allow us to talk about the recent publications, which is mostly since the past 2 years. I'd also like to regret that I'm not going to be talking about any guidelines as such. There have been some guidelines in the past 2 years because of the basic understanding from my teachers that the guidelines are basically they're an understanding of the literature that you search and you put into clinical practice. So everybody has their own guidelines. So we're not going to be discussing about the guidelines. So before we proceed, we have to know where is all this publications coming from. So the maximum publications are actually coming from the European continent, followed by the American and the Canadian subcontinent, then the Australian, and then is the Chinese and the Japanese publications. Unfortunately, there is I have been unable to find any publications of any significant truth from our subcontinent in the past 2 years, and maybe we could actually this could be an impetus to publish and have a name on the world map. So our first publication that we're going to discuss is going to be, it's a systematic review which was prepared for the Canadian Society of Nephrology for their clinical practice, and they try to analyze systematically patients who were dialyzed on home dialysis, and the types of intervention and comparators that they use were, they try to compare different AV accesses, they try to compare the modes in which the cannulation can be done, whether there was any significance of using antimicrobial prophylaxis versus none in patients using buttonhole cannulations, and whether there was any impact of close connected devices versus the standard lock connectors. And most of these patients were adult patients who were undergoing intensive hemodialysis, and they excluded patients who were having in-center dialysis because they found that there were a lot of there was a lot of comparison between, it was very difficult to compare between the in-center and patients who were dialyzing at home. They excluded patients who had heart failure and hemodiaphragm. So if you can see from this chart, this was a very significant data collection in which they have kind of assessed patients who have vascular access effectiveness depending on the access type, what type of cannulation, and the close connected device, in which unfortunately there are just 2 studies. So there was actually no study which compared a central venous catheter with an AV access, and the bacteremia rates were found to be higher with the central venous catheterization compared with an AV access, as we all know. Access intervention rates were higher with more frequent hemodialysis, but however this does not affect the access survival rates. The buttonhole cannulation was associated with bacteremia rates which was similar to those seen in CVC in some series. However, topical mupirocin would attenuate this effect. There was no direct comparison between the connecting device in these studies. So what were the problems with these with the analysis that they found of different studies over the past 6 to 7 years? They found that the quality of studies was actually limited in both when they tried to select the type of vascular access, effectiveness in dialysis, as well as the type of cannulation. Also, in the data that they collected on the use of topical antimicrobial prophylaxis, they found that though there was lower infection rates in patients who were on mupirocin, but this could be because of rigorous surveillance practices which were carried out in a subset of patients. There was, unfortunately, there was no randomized trials and observational studies in using close connected devices. So the conclusion of this was that this review highlights that there are several differences in the management of vascular accesses in conventional as well as intensive hemodialysis population. And then there is a need to standardize the vascular access outcome. The overall quality of the evidence in this review was actually very poor. The next is published in the AJKD this was in June 2012. We know most of the data from here, but I thought it was important to discuss this. They tried to analyze and do a meta-analysis of different randomized control trials on use of real-time ultrasound guidance for the placement of hemodialysis catheters, and they also looked into patients who were not on dialysis, that is non-CKD patients. And the results were very encouraging that when we used ultrasound guidance, there was lower catheter placement failures. There was the time to place the first catheter was also lesser. The hematoma formation was lesser, and the number of attempts that people took to insert catheters were fewer. In the non-dialysis population, which was a subset of population that they analyzed subsequently, they found that when you use anatomical landmarks, the cannulation failure rates were high as 20%, and the perioperative complications were as high as 36%. When you use ultrasound guidance, the first part's cannulation improved to 90% versus 40% in patients with anatomical landmarks, and carotid artery punctures were subsequently reduced. So the UK society, the NICE and the UK Renal Association have actually endorsed use of two-dimensional ultrasound imaging for central venous catheterization. We move on to the next study, which was also published in AJKD in the year 2013. This was a very interesting study because they tried to analyze what is the exact timing that we should actually place an AV access in patients who are with CKD. So they used two different strategies. One strategy was based on whether do you compare the estimated GFR, or should you begin to anticipate putting one depending on the time frame to progression to ESRD. As we all know that existing guidelines for AV fistula referrals are still inconsistent, and we don't know what exactly it is. The KDOQI came up with in 2012 that the AV fistula referral should be given at 12 months before anticipated dialysis. Then in 2002, it went down to the eGFR criteria, that is less than 30 ml per minute should be referred for an AV fistula. In 2006, they came down again from 12 months to 6 months. The Canadian Society of Nephrology guidelines suggest referral about 15 to 20 mils per minute in patients with progressive ESRD. But the problem lies in what is the sort of progression that we are looking at in our patients. There are patients who progress very fast to ESRD, and there are patients who progress slow to ESRD. So you can't have a fixed guideline on saying at this particular GFR, at this particular time, you refer these patients for an AVF or an AV graft. So for fast progressors and patients who had a GFR of 25 ml per minute, achieved a similar central venous catheterization percentage, which is approximately 40%, as referral at 15. So if you refer them even at a higher GFR, you will have approximately the same amount of CVC percentage. This should be actually lower than 40% in most of the clinical data that I've seen. And for patients, if you're looking at time frames in patients who are aged between 70 to 80 years, 80 to 90 years, if you're using a time frame of 15 to 80 months to progression, it was found that up to 20% of the patients had unnecessary AV fistulas as compared to younger patients who were referred in the same, which had a lesser unacceptable AV fistulas. In terms of eGFR threshold, if a threshold strategy was kept at 20 ml per minute, then there was more unnecessary AV fistulas in elderly as compared to the younger population. So if you look at patients who have unnecessary AV fistula creation, if you refer a patient at 6 months who is 80 to 90 years, or a patient at 9 months who is 70 to 80 years, or a patient who have referred at 12 to 15 month window of a younger patients, they are going to have exactly the same number of unnecessary AV fistulas. So you should be referring older patients at a little later time. Now, if you look at this trade-off curve over here, which is actually is the crux of the entire the study, if you look at this point over here, these are patients who are starting with hemodialysis with central venous catheters against patients who have unnecessary AV fistulas. If you consider the eGFR threshold, it is this point from 10 to 20, which is actually decreasing the amount of unnecessary AV fistulas. And so it was recommended that probably this is the point from 10 to 20%, 10 to 20 ml GFR, where you should actually be referring for fistulas. But then when you look at if you look at this curve over here, which shows the expected hemodialysis lifetime on these patients, the expected hemodialysis lifetime with the GFR over 10 is very poor as compared to if you refer between 15 to 20. So they came out with a referral strategy of less than 15 to 20, or maybe approximately 15 to 20 ml per minute, which perform best as a threshold strategy for eGFR. Now looking at the time of referral, if you look at this curve over here, you have fewer patients in this who actually start off with a CVC and have lesser unnecessary AV fistula creations. And if you look at this curve over here, you have more patients if the referral is given as about 12 months to the expected hemodialysis time. So it was presumed that probably 12 months would be a better time before you actually refer patients. But then this had a problem because they did not consider any patients who had a non-linear progression of CKD or acute kidney injury. Also, the grafts were not analyzed in this study. Sorry. That's the next study. This is also a systematic review and meta-analysis on the use of antiplatelet therapies for hemodialysis vascular access, longevity, and to prevent failure. They have also analyzed patients depending on what is going to be the thrombosis rate, loss of patency, the failure to attain vascular access suitable for dialysis, and whether there has been any need to intervene such patients, whether antiplatelets actually assist maturity, what is the bleeding complications associated with antiplatelet treatment, or maybe withdrawal of this treatment. If we look at this chart over here, it very clearly demonstrates, if you look at these patients who, whether the antiplatelet was better or antiplatelet was worse, you have most of the data on the relative risk for dialysis vascular access, preventing thrombosis, especially for fistula, which favors that antiplatelets are better. When you look at early thrombosis, again data was only for the AV fistula, and again it demonstrates that the antiplatelet therapy is better. In terms of failure to attain suitability for dialysis, there was not much of a difference between an AV fistula or an AV graft. And for the need of access intervention, it was seen that if a patient is on an antiplatelet and has a fistula, then the need for access intervention is slightly lesser, which was not there in the graft. Look at the major bleeding, there was actually not much of a difference between either fistula, graft, and the data was confounding, so there is actually no outcomes on that. So this is just a synopsis of what we've just seen just now. Early vascular access failure, there is significantly reduced early thrombosis in patients who have fistulas, no data on grafts. Failure to attain vascular access, which is suitable for dialysis, again uncertain effect on fistula, but however there were some 2 studies on AV shunts which probably said that there could be some suitability using an antiplatelet drug for sustenance of an AV shunt. In terms of need for intervention or to assist maturation, again there was uncertain effects on either the fistula or graft, and there was just one small trial of shunt patency, that the shunt patency was probably better with the antiplatelet drugs. In terms of bleeding, we've already discussed that there was no significant major or minor bleeding risk. So the existing randomized trials have actually shown that antiplatelet agents such as aspirin, ticlopidine, and clopidogrel in variable doses, in variable different studies, have actually halved the risk of thrombosis of patency failure rates in patients with CKD during the 1 to 6 months treatment. But what was also highlighted in this analysis was that even short-term antiplatelet therapy for approximately 8 weeks after AV fistula also markedly reduced the early failure rates. When do we initiate antiplatelet drugs? Well, there is no clear consensus on when to do it. Some studies have done it before, some have done after, but majority of the studies have actually initiated antiplatelets before the surgery. So the conclusion of this trial was that antiplatelet treatment protects fistula from thrombosis or loss of patency, but it has very little effect on the graft patency, and it has uncertain effects on vascular access, maturation for dialysis, and major bleeding. The problem again in this analysis was that most of the trials had very high risk for bias, and so the data has to be actually analyzed very carefully. This is another interesting paper which was published in a European journal, which actually has analyzed the cost effectiveness of vascular access of AV fistulas versus AV graft. As we all know that AV fistulas are late to mature, but they have early access failures, and AV grafts are early to use, but they have the long-term patencies are poorer. So this data over here tried to analyze that if a patient was to be put either on an AV fistula or an AV graft, what would be the most cost effective. So analyzed, this was a retrospective analysis in which they used a Markov model in which they followed patients who had functional accesses, and they found whether they went into failure, and whether after the failure did they go to death or the change of modality. This is the kind of table that was created in which they found that in patients who had AV grafts, there were more deaths as compared to AV fistula failures. And also, the second thing that they analyzed was that amongst the patients who had an AV fistula maturation, after they went into non-maturation, the change of modality in most of these patients was more than that of an AV graft. And they analyzed the cost effectiveness of an AV fistula or an AV graft. And as we all know, as in all setups, the AV fistula is definitely a cheaper modality as compared to the AV graft. And what was analyzed that if the patient dies after maturation also, it was found that even after use of the AV fistula or AV graft, the AV graft turns out to be more expensive as compared to an AV fistula. If you look at this graph over here, This is a graph which analyzed patients with AV graft, and they found that in terms of change of modality, AV grafts perform better than AV fistulas, which is actually more change in modality because there is early failure rates are higher. But in terms of functionality, it was found that the long-term patency and functionality of patients with AV fistula was better. And if you look at this scatter diagram over here, which is very interesting, they've plotted all the different patients here, and they found that the effect difference to the cost difference compared between the AV fistula and AV graft was actually in favor of AV fistula. So the AV fistula turns out to be more cost effective than AV grafts. And this paper over here is actually, this is another paper which contradicts the previous paper. This was also published in one of the European journals. This was a European study, in fact, published in the Annals of Surgery. And over here they analyzed two different strategies. Whether you should go for an AV fistula first in a patient and then follow it with a synthetic vascular graft, or you should go for a synthetic vascular graft first. What they've analyzed was that if you went for an AV fistula first, and if you had a maturation rate of more than 66% in your program, then probably the AV fistula first strategy is better in terms of a cost utility ratio as compared to an AV graft. And for your AV fistula, they further analyzed it, that what is the best, this was a hypothetical model that they had set. So they further analyzed that what is the best particular rate of AV fistula maturation at which the program is actually going to have a cost utility ratio which is more in favor of an AV fistula. And they found that 82% of AV fistula maturation, if 82% of AV fistulas have primary patencies at the end of 6 months, then it is going to be a cost effective. However, the limitation of this program was that, of this study was that this was not a depiction, it was just a model in which they. So the final conclusion of the study was that the incremental cost effectiveness of AV fistula first versus a synthetic vascular graft first strategy was less than $50,000 per quality adjusted life years, as long as the probability of AV fistula maturation was set at 36% or higher. Now I must comment on this, that most of the programs that have been published and most of the literature says that their AV fistula maturation rates are less than 30%. There are very few programs which have said that their AV fistula maturation rates are up to 40%. So hence the current emphasis of placing AV fistulas in all dialysis patients may not be optimal. This is a study which is actually being now looked into by the KDOQI, because the KDOQI has endorsed that AV fistula first program since 2002, which they re-endorsed again in 2006. This is the next study in which they have tried to associate what are the clinical outcomes of different hemodialysis access types in terms of the all-cause mortality, fatality with infections, and the cardiovascular events. They used incident and prevalent patients, and in this, if you were to compare the relative risks of all of these studies over here in terms of whether it would favor a catheter or favor a fistula, definitely it says that it favors a fistula. But when you adjust it for the class interval, and if you adjust the risk ratio for the class interval, you find that the fistulas, the most of the data, which is the old data, favors fistulas, and most of the data, which is slightly recent, actually favors the catheters. Or in fact, if you look at this data also here, favoring catheters versus graft, we would look into this, that most of the data is favoring graft as compared to the catheters. So if you analyze the all-cause mortality of fistulas versus catheters, graft versus catheters, or fistula versus grafts, it is evident from this table over here that in terms of all-cause mortality, AV fistulas are lowest, and the number of additional events are highest in patients who have catheters. In terms of major cardiovascular events and fatal infections, it was non-significant when they compared all of these three modalities. However, all studies have bias, and the biggest problem with this study was the selection bias, which was actually quite a lot. So the conclusion of this study was that you should be using catheters for all hemodialysis patients, but it has high risk of death, infections, and cardiovascular events compared with other vascular access types, and patients with usable fistulas have the lowest risk. This is another study which is basically from the pediatric journal. This is a pediatric study, And this was interesting because in this study they tried to compare the outcomes of children who were put on an AV fistula versus a central venous line for long-term chronic hemodialysis. As we all know that amongst all the pediatricians, I'm sure over here we have 2 pediatricians, they will agree to this, that central venous catheters are preferred over AV fistulas in patients who are young and who have a body weight of less than 15 kilograms. So this data over here is actually, if you look at this data over here, if you compare the AV fistulas versus the central venous lines, most of the AV fistulas in this program were, the mean age was about 13 years, and in the central venous line, the age was 2 years. This is exactly what is performed in most of the pediatric units, that the younger patients get central venous lines and the elderly get AV fistulas. If you were to compare the complication rates in these patients, in terms of AV fistula, the primary access failure rates were lower, successful revisions were slightly lower as compared to the central venous catheters. The secondary failure rates, access failure rates were lower. And if we looked at the primary access failure rates for the AV fistula as well as central venous line, this is the data that I've already talked about before. You can just to show you this. And if you look at the annualized hospitalization rate for the access malfunction, AV fistulas were actually lower than central venous lines. And this data was quite significant. In terms of infection rates, again, AV fistulas performed better than central venous line. And in terms of dialysis adequacy, which also they analyzed in the primary outcomes, all laboratory values, there was actually no difference between the AV fistulas or the central venous lines. In terms of access survival rates also, the AV fistulas were comparable with central venous catheters. If you would look at the access survival in patients, and this is the Kaplan-Meier analysis, you would look at the time post-access creation. This is not right. This is access. There's some problem with the printing. So if you look at the access survival rates, the access survival rates were actually higher in patients who had AV fistulas as compared to central venous catheters. So there was some limitations to this study. First of all, this was a very small study population, approximately 35-40 patients. It was a retrospective analysis, and also what was noticed that the children who were in the central venous catheter group were actually younger. So these patients could be having more infections, and that could be responsible for actually having a better outcome in case of patients with AV fistula. This was also performed in a center which had a multidisciplinary team. So they probably had a good vascular surgeon. So maybe that could also be responsible for this. This brings us to the next pediatric. This is also another study which highlights the outcomes of AV fistulas in a pediatric population, which was published in the Journal of Vascular Access about a month back. This was again a retrospective analysis of approximately 13 to 14 years of population aged between 0 to 19 years, in which they tried to analyze the primary and the secondary patency rates. And the only thing which was important in this was that it was just the age of the patient, age of the child, which was actually responsible, which was significant for the primary patency rates. So the conclusion of the study was that AV fistulas demonstrated excellent long-term patency with minimal complications in pediatric hemodialysis patients regardless of the weight, and so there should be more AV fistulas created for pediatric patients. The next is it's a randomized controlled trial which was published about 3 months back in the American Journal of Kidney Disease, which was to analyze the hemodialysis catheter design and the performance of these catheters. 2 catheters were analyzed. One is the palindrome catheter and one is the Hemostar catheter, and they were analyzed for infection and thrombosis-free catheter survival as well as the rheological performance. We have to understand the palindrome catheter is basically, it's a symmetrical tip catheter which has laser cut side slots. The Hemostar catheter has a 3 centimeter staggered tip, and it has a machine punch distal side holes. So look at this graph over here. Again, this is a curve which analyzes the patients which were free of thrombosis and infections. There were slightly higher patients at the end of approximately 36 months with the Hemostar catheter. This table over here further analyzes that the palindrome catheter actually had higher mean effective blood flow, but the need for thrombolysis was also higher. And if you looked at over here, the Hemostar and the palindrome catheter, the rate of CRBSI was lower with the Hemostar catheter as compared to the palindrome catheter. So the conclusion of the study was that primary assisted patency and incidence of infection and thrombosis was similar for both the catheter types. However, Yeah, sorry. However, the palindrome catheters had achieved higher blood flow rates than Hemostar catheter. So, however, this was a single center study. The next study is basically comparing taurolidine citrate catheterate locks. This is a systematic review. I'll go through it very fast. This is just a table which shows that the taurolidine citrate was actually better in terms of infection control, but in terms of thrombosis, it did not perform better than the regular heparin anticoagulation. This is an interesting trial. This was just from a single center, and this was a placebo-controlled randomized trial in which they used pancreatic elastase in 2 different strengths to apply periadventially around the AV fistulas, and this is the strength in which the pancreatic elastase was used, 10 micrograms and 30 micrograms, and we see in all fistulas, in terms of percentage of patency, the 30 micrograms was better than the 10 micrograms. This was for the brachiocephalic AV fistulas. And so the conclusion of this study was that that this 30 micrograms of pancreatic elastase applied to the periadvential surface of the AV fistula actually improved the maturation and primary patencies of the radiocephalic fistula. This is the last study. This is primary balloon angioplasty of small cephalic veins. This is important because we've been talking about hydrostatic dilatation and maintaining the patency of fistulas. So this compared hydrostatic dilatation with primary balloon angioplasties in patients, and they found that primary balloon angioplasty was better than using hydrostatic dilatation. And this is the balloon angioplast, which was used all the way up to the elbow joint, and this is the catheter after that. And final conclusion was that it is more effective as compared to, I think we'll skip this study because this is basically, these are 2 different types of AV fistulas creation. And the 2 different types are, one is the straight line onlay tract, and the other is a piggy bank. And we found that the juxta-anastomotic stenosis was lower with the slot piggy bank type of procedure. Thank you.
Thank you.